Let's take a look at layer key overrides in AutoCAD architecture. To begin with, I'll refresh on the previous discussion on the layer standards in AutoCAD architecture. And what we looked at there was from the Manage tab up here, Style Manager. We'll go down to Multi-Purpose Objects, Layer Key Styles. And if you recall, or if you've watched that video, we took a look at how the layer keys point to layer names that you can then define the properties for. So if you think about an object like a door will key to the door. A door will automatically be keyed because it's a core object in AutoCAD architecture, and those core objects have what you could call core keys. So regardless of any settings, when you bring a door in, it will look for the batching key, which then points to a layer name that is done by layer standards, which are controlled through this button here. We'll take a look at, in another video, we'll take a look at how to work with the standards. But you are free to create all the properties over here. So the color, the line type, the line weight. And notice things like door cannot be removed or renamed because those are core objects. But there are other items in here that you can, I'll look for one here, that you can rename. There was one right there. So Kogo is one. And there's maybe another one down here. But a lot of these are core keys. Now you can create your own, and you can also override or redirect core objects to new keys if you prefer. But most importantly, just be aware that there are keys that are hard-coded, and the objects will go to them unless they're set in some other way. Okay, now to demonstrate layer key overrides, a good example would be to do an electrical plan. So I'm just going to go ahead and in my project navigator do a new construct and create a first floor electrical and assign it to the first floor. All right, once I've got that blank drawing or construct set up, it's a drawing, I'll bring in the first floor, and I'll go ahead and I'll set that to low detail. And I'll make sure I'm at 1/4 inch equals a foot because that's my intended printing scale. The objects will be annotatively scaled, but I like to start with the right scale. And then I'm going to lock my Z value to 0 because these are going to be electrical symbols, the 2D style. So for doing electrical, AutoCAD or Archidyme has two solutions for AutoCAD architecture users. I'll go ahead here and switch to what do we have here? Electrical 2D. So these are the types of symbols most people are familiar with who are AutoCAD users. They're just annotatively scaled, dual attributed blocks, essentially. They are MB blocks, but they're blocks. Now, if we go up here to the content catalog under electrical kit, you'll see we offer two solutions here for the same, basically the same stuff. So the 2D set is here. But we also, for those who want 3D, for like interior elevations or in your sections, or if you want to render, you can go through here and you'll find all kinds of 3D versions of things. You know, they use the same symbols that you would expect for the 2D, but they'll offer you all of this extra 3D stuff. But I'm going to just do a very simple 2D layout here. So I'll just go ahead and use the 2D symbols. And I will just begin by bringing one in. So I'll bring in this symbol here. And specify scale, no. I'm going to look over here, rotate, yes. Okay, so that's good. So I'll just drop it right here and go ahead, use my ortho control and drop that symbol in. Now when it comes in, it has a certain look to it. Basically what you're seeing is the layer, and you know that's about it. The symbol is the symbol, but it has a color. No line type or anything. So if we select it, you'll notice if we go down to the properties palette, you'll see the layer that it's gone to. So AWOL power, and if we type in layer, we'll see here it is. Oh, E, sorry, EWOL power. And it's cyan, so I could change the color, which I'll do right now. Let's make it yellow. Okay, so I'll make that yellow, and we're good. I'll do a regen there. So if I bring it in, another one, that's what it's going to look like. That's fine, right? That's expected. The reason it came into E-wall power is what's going on with the settings on the tool palette here. So if I right-click, hover over that, right-click and go to Properties, you'll see that it's been set to a layer key. So as I mentioned before, you have your layer key styles, and this is one of the keys in there. And if I click on it, you'll see that list shows up, and that's how that was configured. It was set to the power key, and that creates that layer right there. All right, and so that's the basics of most of your objects in AutoCAD architecture can be set up on the palette to a key. Now you might have noticed that there is an override option here. So there is a chance to set an override there. I'll come back to that later. But what I'm going to do now is imagine that we're doing an existing building that has new power, existing power, and then power to be demolished, or electrical symbols. So I don't have multiple tools on here to do those three things. That would be a lot of redundancy. So one option, I'm not saying this is the one you should choose, but this is a great way to demonstrate the power of overrides, is to go down here and look for the layer key overrides. And this will bring up this dialog box where you can enable overrides. And then you can go through the list and configure them as you wish for the use of that particular tool, or any other tools drawn, as long as this enable all overrides is active. So for example, with the electrical, I might take advantage of the default status options here, and they have one for existing to remain. So I'll pick that off and hit OK. And now if I bring in this tool, it will come in as the original key color. So the original properties that are in the standards, it brings that in. So you would have to go to layer and then redesign how you want that. It is an override on the name, not an override on the properties. There was no configuration of the properties. So it just reads the original key properties, which was cyan. I'm now going to change to green. Okay, and so if I just keep going, it'll just bring in green symbols. The original one will turn green when I regen. So now I have essentially what could be conceived of as proposed and existing. Right, and I can just keep going, but let's go down and change the override now to demolish. So we'll just do the D for demolish. And I'll go ahead and pick that same symbol, and I'll drop one up here. Okay. Now once again, it's using the original key layer properties. So I have to go to layer, and I'll redesign how I want this. So let's say I want these to be a light gray here with a hidden line type. Okay, and if I do, there we go. I didn't even have to regen. So now if I keep going, these will all come in as demolished objects, right? So that kind of tells you how the override works. And if you were to, say, pick another symbol in here, now this is keyed to power, but if we go down to, say, thermostat and right-click, this one is keyed to control. So let's find out what happens if you have the override on, but it's keyed to control. So I'll go ahead and click on it. And let's just put the thermostat over here. All right. So it comes in and it has a color. That's by the original key. If we pick on it, you'll see the layer is E symbol. Oops, no, that's the definition. The layer is T control D. So what has happened is it's read the override in here and just thrown the D on the end of it and created that layer. So if we go to layer, here it is in here, right there. So T control is what it should have gone to if I had not put that override on. And again, I would go in here, if I was doing demolish, I would change that, and I would do the hidden. Now you can kind of see this gets a little tedious if you were doing this on a regular basis. having to go in here and set the colors, the line type, line weight, that's where you would actually just design new keys. So if you go to the previous video, you can learn about making your own keys. That's what I would recommend. And we even have specified that in our electrical tools. On the second page here, we talk about adding keys. Oops, it's on the first page right here. We have some explanation of how to add keys that will make this work much better. So you don't need to set those properties all the time. Okay, so let's see. We've got that over there. Okay, and so if I go down and I take the I don't even have to pull that out. I just disable, and I go back to the thermostat. It's going to come in as its original setting. It'll be on the core layer, which is T control. Okay, and let's go down now to this override and just make sure we clear out everything that's in it, and we'll leave it unchecked. Okay. Now, a couple of things to know about the override setting down here is that you can get to it by typing in layer key override. So if you type in layer key override, it'll pop up, just if you need that as a command to type if you can't find it. And interestingly enough, there's even a typed command for this toggle down here. It's a bit of a typing task, but if you make a tool to do that, it might be worth your while if you use it a lot. And the command to type in is toggle with an L, toggle layer, so L for layer, key, and then override with an S, overrides, and then MNU. So if you type that in, watch it'll toggle. So now that it's been typed in, I can hit enter and you'll see the toggle down here. So that's a little toggle for that. Just something to know. Let's leave it off for now. Okay, so something else to know about these overrides. If you go to the override, you'll notice you can actually go in here and reset the discipline. So that seems pretty serious modification. You could really mess somebody up if you ran by their computer and made some changes like set this to civil, set this to walls, and let's do down here they have one for something like demo in here. You can just pick anything, but you'll notice there's a demo as a minor. And if you enable this and left it like that on somebody's machine, everything they draw will end up on that override. So if I type in wall add, for example, and I just start drawing walls, let's go over here, select them, even though they look correct according to the core key assignment, you should notice that they are sitting on the C wall demo layer. If I add anything, it's going to come in on the C wall demo layer. So if I go to layers, here it is, C wall demo. I'm just going to change the color. Let's go ahead and give it a line type as well. All right, so the overrides can be a little problematic at times if you have them set and haven't been paying attention to them, or you get a file where they've been set and you don't realize that that's occurring. So first thing I want to take a look at is how is it possible to go in and do a major discipline override? If you're doing architectural work, how is it possible you just go and set that to a different discipline? So let's take a look at what controls that. So if you go to your style manager, multi-purpose objects, and down to the layer key style, get that open. You'll notice over here, this is where the control is. So whatever is checked is basically saying that overrides are possible. So if you want to set this up, so for example, discipline is not something that can be overridden, you can just uncheck this. So for example, if I were to go down a wall, and I don't ever want that to occur, I can just uncheck that. So if I do that and apply, notice this will be an interesting thing that will happen. If I now add wall add, and I go ahead and draw that wall, it's going to look just like the override. But if you check it, you'll see it's actually on a different layer. This one is on A wall demo. This one is on C wall demo. And the reason is that even though the override is on, it's ignoring the C in there. And that's what that little change did in the layer key styles right here. All right, just something to know. I think this is a bigger issue in a large office where you're trying to create some control over, you know, how much freedom people have to place things on all different kinds of layers. I never worry about these things, but I'm working by myself, so it's not something I'm concerned about. And in fact, I like the freedom to be able to go in and change my walls over to, say, a different discipline. If they're not actual architectural walls, maybe they're retaining walls or some landscape walls. But those are the controls. And of course, pay attention to your print and so forth, those settings in here. Let's get out here. Now, if you, let's see, the next thing we'll take a look at is this is one place you have an override. This is the other place that you can do an override. So if you go into the properties of any of your tools, you can actually throw an override on them. And you can uncheck this. I don't really see the great benefit of doing it. You could just assign it. I guess you could go in here and you could say, let's go ahead and do this as new work. And do an OK here and an OK here. So when you select this and pop it in, this will work off of the key properties, but it'll do a similar thing. Oh, this is on down here, so it's throwing all of that stuff in there. Let's clear all of this out. Boom, boom, boom. And so now this should come in correctly. So it should come in on E wall power with an N on it. So it's very similar to having the override, you know, down here where you put an N on it. You've just assigned it at the object level, so you're bypassing. So essentially, if I undo this down here, okay, let's check. All right. So now it goes back. It goes back to the core settings. So this would just be E wall power. But at any time, you can say, I would like my overrides active again. It's going to read the override set in the tool. So, you know, it's a way of getting two different layer functionalities out of one tool, I guess you could say. If you have the override active, then you can get the secondary layer out of the single tool. It's just layers, and if you don't, then it just behaves in its ordinary fashion. So it's something to ponder over if you can make use of that. Can't really think of a case where I'm using this override on the tools, but there might be some place where that's occurring and I can't remember right now. So I'm going to go ahead and clear that out of there, and I'll just pull this out here and just do not specify overrides. Okay. All right. And then before I get into the last place that you can address overrides, we'll talk about fixing what you see on the screen. If you have been working with a lot of overrides and you decide you would like to undo some of that override work, there's a great command in AutoCAD architecture called a remap layer. And then I found out that you can just type in remap. So you don't need the layer part in there. Now the way that remap works is it will take a look at either your override setting, or if there's no override, it'll take a look at those core objects that I mentioned. So for example, walls and doors. Multi-view blocks do not count as part of the core objects because they don't have any layer assignments. So if I take one of these multi-view blocks and come in here, you'll notice there's no layer settings for multi-view blocks. They can reside on any layer. So it doesn't really function on multi-view blocks the way that you would think, but it certainly functions quite well on the key objects like doors and windows and walls. So for example, if I go down here and I uncheck the enable overrides and I say remap and I select all of, I'm going to leave just that one. Actually, let me get them all. I'll show you something here. So if I remap that and I go down to the command line, notice that there's the option for O. That's by object. And O won't work on multi-view blocks because they're not really tied to a layer key. But doors and windows and walls and many of the other core objects are, so you can use O for object. And what it now did is it went and read what the core layer key for wall is. So it's going to go to layer A wall and take on the properties of that key. Now something interesting is the remap will dump layers. So I don't know, did it? We should see. There's A wall demo or C wall demo. Did I leave any of the? Let's do an undo, and take a look at the layers. Yeah, see, C-wall demo. C-wall demo is what these guys are on, or at least one of them is. If I remap, and I go ahead and I select all of these guys, and I do override objects, that layer has now been purged. C-wall demo is now gone. Just be aware of that. I guess it's kind of handy. It won't remove it if there's still a remaining object. Now, if the overrides are on, so let's do this to, let's do something else. We'll just do D, and we'll do wall. Okay, and we'll come down here and we'll do demo, and I'll enable it. Okay, and then I'll do a remap. If I select all of, I'll just select this group here, enter, O by object. Now I have a new layer. And those are, they are set to that layer. So if we go down here, D wall, so I can change the properties. It looks the same because of the properties from the original key. So let's just make it red. And let's make this thing something like dashed. So it remapped to the override. Isn't that interesting? All right. What can we do with, say, the electrical symbols? Well, if you, let's see, if you have no overrides, it's not going to do anything. It would only remap per the override. I can demonstrate here. So if I take the enable overrides off, I'll clear this out too. I don't want this stuff in here anymore. All right, and then I do a remap on these electrical symbols. Nothing's going to happen if I do O by object. Okay, so there's nothing that I can do with O by object. However, take a look at this. I can remap to a key. So I can grab all of these symbols. Let's say I just wanted them all to be on the electrical, right? So I can remap. Now notice it says enter a key, a layer key, or O by object, right? So what I can do, if I know the key, or you can type in question mark, and it'll give you a list of all the keys. Question mark. Oh, you have to F2 and you'll see. Now I know some of these keys by heart. I know that ELEC is one and power is one. So I could specify ELEC, and then it'll remap, essentially just pushing all those objects to the layer E-ELEC. All right, so those are some interesting things to know about overrides. The last thing is going to be a goofy thing. I'm not sure it really works that well. It's been around in AutoCAD architecture for some years and has never been something I could really use. I think it has great possibility, but it seems like it was kind of dropped. So I'm going to leave this here and just go over to the first four. Let's see, I'm going to turn off a layer here. I'm going to take the pattern. So let's see, it's a slab pattern. And I'll just turn the pattern off in there so it's easier to read. Now, if you'll notice in this floor plan, I don't have any windows. If I type in window style, I'll find just the standard in there. Probably no one uses standard, but I'm going to go ahead and just use it. It's the default window. It doesn't matter. I can make a new one, but it's all the same concept here. If I double click on it, and I go to any of the display representations here, the last tab, let's say sill, and I double click, you'll notice you have the option to do overrides. So this is an override, a layer key override on a component of an object, so an internal component. I think this has great possibilities, but I'm going to show you that it has some just unusual behaviors that make it unusable for me. So to demonstrate how it just works, I'm going to go in here. I'm going to pick both these sills, and I'm going to go ahead. You have to use the key. You can't just use an override. I figured that out. So I'll have to key it to, say, glass. That's where the core thing keys to, core window. So actually it's window. Even though the layer is glazing, the key is window, which I think probably should be. I have a debate on the naming here. This should be a wind or this should be glaze, but who cares? So I'll set the key. Now I can do the overrides, and I'll go ahead and set a minor override to sill. I believe there's a sill down here. We take a look. There's sill. So there's the override. And then since I'm assigning this to a layer that will be produced by the key and the override on the key, I will make all of these things by layer. It seems to me that should be self-explanatory. So I would do all, I'm not going to do the rest here, but I would do all of those to by layer. But so if we're looking at this here, that internal component, the sill, should now pop up on the layer produced by the key wind with that override on it. So I'll go ahead and come out, and I'll apply, and I'll hit OK. And just by doing this enough times and understanding it, you will need to activate your overrides. But that's the same thing we looked at when we did the override inside here. So the overrides have to be activated. So we'll go ahead and activate that. And now I'll go ahead and bring that window in. So I'll just say window, add. And it's standard, so that's the one I worked on, and I'll just pop a window in right here. Now if everything worked, what should occur is that the sill should be on its own layer. All right, so we should find a sill layer in here. So if we go down and we take a look at glazing, there it is. So it produced it, the key worked, and it produced a separate layer. Of course, it uses the same properties from the original key, so we can change that now. I'm going to go ahead and make that gray. Let me make it red so we can, gray reads, okay, we'll do gray. All right, so there it is. And if I continue to add window and pop it in over here, it's going to reproduce that setting. Even if I turn off the override now, it's going to keep doing it. So window, add, and I go ahead and place it over here. Boom. So now the override doesn't, the setting down here doesn't really matter anymore. And this is why. So if we go to window style, and we go back and we take a look at the sill, notice what's happened. You lost the ability to change the key. You lost the ability to work on the overrides. And what it really did, upon first use, it just spit out a layer. It used this to create that first layer, and once that layer has been created, then that's it for that window style. It's actually set without an override, so all the windows that don't have overrides for the sill would all have they would all have the sill on that layer. Now, this is part of why I find this difficult to use. I can go in and assign a layer myself manually if I wanted to. I see this is kind of nice, but since I can't go back and make any changes in here, it really limits the usability. And also, you can only do it if the object isn't inserted in a file. You can only work with these. So watch this. If I go OK and apply and get out of here, and I get rid of the only two windows in here. No, there's three. If if I get rid of all three, so there are no windows in this file right now. If I go back to window style, and I go to standard, and I go to sill, the overrides are back. Now I can change them. So you can set these core overrides, the key and the override, if the object does not exist in the file. And then I have found that if there is a block in the drawing with that object in it, you're done for. You'll have to get rid of the block and purge it out before you can come in and make these changes. Make of this what you will. I think it's quite cool if it just allowed more freedom of use. So that's about all I can say about the third place that you have overrides. And I think that covers everything on overrides. Yeah, we'll end it here, and in the next video, we'll take a look at the layer standards control for how those names are all controlled. So that would be your discipline and the dash and then the 4 characters. So we'll take a look at how to work with that, modify it if you need.